Hi everyone, I'm Christina from That Canadian Teacher. I hope distance learning has been going well for you. In today's video, I'm going to be going through how to test and maintain some of that integrity of testing through D2L. Now, on the whole, we can't really maintain the integrity of our tests and the security of our tests like we would have in regular day school. So I'm going to show you a couple of ways that you can kind of manage that integrity a little bit better and keep your tests as secure as possible. So stay tuned, and I hope today's video is helpful for you. So I'm going to start off by just giving you a little bit of an overview of creating a new test or a new quiz is what they call it here in D2L. I do use the old setup of D2L. So there is, you can move and migrate yourself to the new version. I prefer the features that are available in the old version still, so I'm still operating off of that old version until they force my hand to do it. So just a couple of things. Let's get started, and I'll show you a little bit around creating a new quiz. So I'm just going to call it test practice. You can give it a category. I do give categories for it. However, I don't find any use for it. Like, it doesn't show them in a category organized. And I'm not sure if that's just specific to me because I'm using the older version, or if it's true for even the newer version as well, but it doesn't organize it anywhere in categories. So I don't know what the purpose of this is, but sometimes I'll just put in a category just in case one day I'll come in and find it in a category, but it doesn't really do anything. This is where you can add questions if you want to add questions. We'll come back to that in a couple of minutes. And if you want, you can put a description. Just make sure that you turn on the on button here. And what it will do is when the student goes to enter the test, just before they enter the test itself, there's a page of D2L jargon that's there for them. And you can have your instructions. So you could say something like, this test will take 10 minutes or whatever you want to say. So there's a description and there's an introduction. I like the placement of the introduction a little bit better on that page of jargon. So I usually use the introduction. And I do change the font coloring, which is just over, where is it here? Oh, here it is. So you can change the font coloring to something, and I usually use red so that it really pops out. Okay. So that's the basic overview of it. When you go to add or edit a question, I'll just show you what it looks like here. You can add new question and then just select the kind of question that you want. So I typically stick with multiple choice or written response. I do not use short answer unless you're looking for like anything that would be under a sentence in length. So like one word, like that would be a short answer. A written response would be anything longer than one sentence. So for short answer questions, I'm going with written response, but this could be as big as even an essay if you wanted it to be. But so the two that I use all the time are written response and multiple choice. You can also import from your question library and from the learning repository. I'm going to show you the question library in just a moment. So something that I didn't go over in my introduction to D2L is the question library. This is actually a new discovery for me, so I'm going to share this with you guys here. But basically, if instead of creating your questions in the test itself, the better thing to do is to create them in the question library. This allows you to be able to pull questions from the question library, especially if you have multiple sections. So for example, in quad 1, I'm teaching history, and then in quad 2, I'm teaching history. It allows me to take questions from a repository of, let's say, 20 questions, and then just migrate them over to the test I'm creating. So instead of going into a test, so creating a new test and then creating new questions, start in your question library. So go to your question library, and then you can create a new question. So I'm going to create some new questions, and I'll show you how it would work. So I'll be right back. Okay, so I added in 3 questions here just to show you how we're going to migrate them over to our test. So let's go back to our quizzes portion. And you'll recall that I created a practice test. Now, this little eyeball just means the test is hidden. So let's go into it by editing. And now we're going to add or edit questions. So we're going to click on this. And what we're going to do is we're going to go over to import, and we're going to go to browse question library. And so what I can do is, if I had a repository, and I only created 3 questions, but let's say I had 20 questions, I can add in whatever questions I want. And then what will happen, and I'll show you, so I'll just import these 3 here. So let's say I want to add in more questions. So I want to add in that 3rd question there. I'm going to come to my import again, browse question library, and what you're going to see is it tells me that these questions have already been imported. So I can add in my 3rd question, and it will now add it here. Now let's say I want to change this question. So I'm going to come in here, and let's say I want to do like, what year did World War II start in instead? So I'm going to change this answer. I'm going to put 1939, and I'm going to click save. Now what it's going to do is it's going to say, well, you already have a question in use and you're changing it. Did you want to also apply that change to the question to your question library? So what will happen is it will also change the question in my question library. So that question that said, what year did World War I start in, will now say, what year did World War II start in? So if you want that to also be reflected in your question library, you can go ahead and click the question library as well. If you only want it to reflect the test that you're doing, then just leave it so that the one test is checked off. So I'm just going to actually cancel this because I don't want to change the questions. What you can also do is you can create a section title. So I like to always give a little bit of a section title that gives the category that I'm testing. And I don't hide or anything like that. And I do shuffle the questions within the section. So I'm going to actually save that. And so you'll see it pops down here. So I can just bring it to the top. And then what I do is I nestle the questions underneath it. So you kind of have to play with it a little bit so that it shows, you see how it's staggered into it. And so I just kind of pop them in there. The advantage to this is when I'm going to import from the question library, it makes it a little bit easier. Now it might not show it for this one because we've just done this. But when you go to create your new, let's say your class, your new class shell, and you import all of your tests and everything and all your content over, you will see it actually reflected in here, and it will be nestled as knowledge. And then you can just kind of search, okay, knowledge for this test, and then pull it from that category. So you can actually further filter it. So you can see how I've filtered it here. So I can specifically pull from a section that I had in previous tests. So now our test is ready to go, but not ready yet because the students can't see it. So let's talk about some of the features that you can apply to better control the test experience for your students, to try and limit the potential for cheating or for dishonest behavior during a test. Now, again, you're never going to get away from the student not necessarily, trying to cheat by having their notes next to them. So for me, there's nothing I can do about it. They're not, in front of me. I can't control what they're doing at home. So I basically allow them to do an open book test. So they do create their own review package and things like that. But you want to create an opportunity that they have to study and use the notes just to kind of supplement areas where they might be unsure, to kind of limit them searching on the internet, trying to find the answers. So you want to kind of make it as tight as possible so that they have a less opportunity to cheat, where they have to come in prepared to the test to at least demonstrate some of their abilities. So let's go back into edit here. So there's a couple of features. I'm going to show you the first one. Questions per page. What this does is it limits the number of questions that are on each page. So I'm going to show you what this looks like. So I'm going to limit it to 1, and you're going to hit apply. And you're going to know that it's put in place because this little line bolds here. And so this is telling you that there's going to be 1 question per page. So I'm going to click save and close, and I'll show you what it looks like from the student perspective. So to see what it looks like from the student perspective, we're going to go to preview, and we're going to start our quiz. And so do you notice that it has only 1 question for that page? But you see that there over here has 1, 2, 3 pages because we did 3 questions. So the student would have to select their question, and then they can move to the next page. Now you want to be mindful that you want to just tell your students, don't hit submit quiz unless you want to submit your quiz, because once you've submitted it, that's it. And you'd have to go in and delete that submission opportunity. So you just want to make sure that they're aware that they're supposed to be clicking the next page, not submit quiz. A lot of them automatically go straight to submit quiz, but no, you want to do next page. So let's make our choices here. And then we'll go to the next page, and it will bring me to question 2, right? Now, with the way that we set it up currently, it allows me to go back to the previous page and change this, okay? So you can lock that off, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But what it does is it forces them to look at one particular question. If you've randomized your questions, so you'll see here, if we go into our edit, okay, because I nestled it into the knowledge, what you can do, so let's go back into our section here, into knowledge. You can shuffle the questions in this section, okay? So I'm gonna click save on that. And what it says is shuffling is on, which what that means is that these questions will now be shuffled. So student 1 might get this as question 1. Student 2 might get this as question 1. So it's going to be different for every student. As well, in the question itself, I've also randomized the answers order. So, you know, this appearing as the first option may not be the same for all students. There's going to be variety depending on the student. Okay. So let's go back to our preview again. So I'm back here in the preview. And so what year did World War I end in? I believe, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't the last time that we were in here, what year did it start in? So you see that it has already randomized it for me. So what year did it end in? So we'll just click right at the answer here. And then it goes, you know, who was the Prime Minister of Canada during World War I? So we'll do Robert Borden. Now I can, of course, go back and change this. So we'll talk about how to fix that in just a second. But now, you know, if I'm saying, you know, if I'm doing this with my friend, their question 1 may be different than my question 1. So that's one way that you can limit, you know, collective answering of questions. Now, to prevent the students from being able to move backwards in their test, you can prevent moving backwards through the pages. So this is what's known as paging. So if you click this off, what it will do is it will prevent the students from moving backwards in the test. So I'll show you what that looks like. So we'll save and close this. So let's say, you know, what year did it start? So notice it's changed again, right? 1914. And then I'm going to go to next page. Okay, so it's saying you cannot come back. So are you sure you're good with these questions? Yes, I'm good with that question. So now I move on to the next one. Now you notice there's no back page here. So once I've done that question, it has checked it off as being complete. So I can't move backwards. So if I'm wasting time, you know, collaborating with my friend on the answers, their question 1 is going to be different than my question 1. We don't have that kind of time because, as we're going to talk about in a minute, this clock is going to be ticking down. So we want to make sure, if you're the student, they're going to want to make sure that they move through the test efficiently and move through it as quickly as they can, or as efficiently as they can. Now, if we scroll down a little bit more here, so just to recap, we have applied 1 question per page. We've done paging here. Now, if we come down to the bottom, there are a couple of options as well that you can add in. So there's disable right click. Now, on the student side, what it does is it prevents them from being able to highlight and then right click. By turning on the disable right click, this is preventing the student from being able to do that. Now, I can't show you what that looks like because I haven't been able to get it to work for me, and I think it might be just because I'm a teacher. I have a teacher account, but I do know it works for students because I've had students say, I accidentally pressed right click. So I do know that it works on the student side. The next is disable email and instant messages and alerts. So by clicking this off, this is not going to stop them from being able to use their email or anything like that. What it does actually is it prevents them from receiving emails and paging that are up here. So they won't be distracted by any of the flash that's up here at the top. So if they get a page or they get an email from somebody, this will be turned off as far as I'm aware. Now, if we go to our restrictions section, now remember we want to when we want to start the test, or we want to have the test be populated so students can see that it exists. You're going to check off or uncheck hide from users so that they can see it. But we're going to leave it hidden from users because we don't need anybody to see this right in the moment. Now you're going to create a start date and an end date. Now, I mentioned this in my video where I went through the details of D2L, but basically your start date is when you want the students to be able to enter the test. So if you want them to enter the test at 11:34, then the test will become available to them at 11:34. The end date is the exact date that they are allowed to take the test into. So if you want them to take that test from 11:34 only to, let's say, noon. So you only have that half-hour window of taking that test. You're going to change it so the date is that same day. And then you're going to change the time to be whatever the last opportunity you want them to be able to enter the test. Now, if I enter the test at 11:59, I can still take the test for whatever duration you set it up for. So just keep that in mind. So I do make it pretty narrow, and I force them to take the test in a particular order. So I say you must take the knowledge first, and I block the times off. So the time for the knowledge test would be right when the period starts. The application portion is about 5-10 minutes after that. And then the thinking portion is about 5-10-15 minutes after that point. So I just kind of think about how long it might take them to do the knowledge portion, how long will it take them to do the application portion, and then the thinking portion. And I just kind of manipulate the times based on that. And then once you get a feel with how long it takes them to complete a test, you can make those windows tighter or smaller. Okay. All of this other stuff here, I don't really worry about in the middle, but down here at the bottom is something you want to be aware of. So an enforced time limit means that this is the amount of time that you have to take the test. So if we have 3 multiple choice questions, it shouldn't take you any longer than 3 minutes. But if you had 10 multiple choice questions, you might say anywhere between 8 to 10 minutes is usually a pretty fair time frame. That's what it would probably take them to do that portion of the test in class. So just think about how long would it take them to complete these questions in class on a piece of paper. And then I usually shave off about 5 minutes off of that time. So if it would take them 50 minutes in class, then I would say, okay, then you're going to get 45 minutes instead of 50 minutes. So just kind of thinking, how long would it take them to write it in class? Typing is a little bit quicker, so you can shave off a little bit of time from there. So generally speaking, when we're talking about a test of 10 questions for multiple choice, I give them a time limit of anywhere between 8 to 10 minutes, depending on the placement in the semester. So if it's early in the semester, I give them a little bit more time. Later in the semester, I give them less time. So as low as 8 minutes, as high as 10. I also give them a 5-minute grace period. The 5-minute grace period allows them to just do any of those final changes that they need to make. So once their time has elapsed, they get a message that will show up on their screen saying that your time has exceeded, and they are now going into that grace period time. Now, unfortunately, D2L does not count down their grace period. So what I've told the students is to set a timer on their watches or clocks or whatever, their phones, to tell them they have 5 minutes left, because they won't know if they've exceeded 5 minutes. They could go into 20 minutes. It only tells them that first 10 minutes. It doesn't tell them the second, the 5-minute grace period, but that 5-minute grace period just gets them an opportunity to look back on their questions, to see if there's any changes that they want to make, or to realize that they have very little time remaining. So once the grace period has ended, what are the things that you want to happen? I always do the middle one here. Prevent the student from making further changes. So while they can still see the test, they cannot make any further changes. So anything that they type is going to be frozen. They can see it and they can type, but it's not going to register on your end. So it's going to allow you to just get whatever they've written in the time. So in the 15 minutes, let's say, of the test. So this prevents them from making any further changes beyond that. The special access portion, I mentioned this in my opening video on D2L, but basically this allows for students that might have exceptionalities to have additional time. So let's say you have a student that requires double time on their test. You can add them in here. Always leave it as the first option. If you do the second option, what this does is it allows the test access to only those students. So if you have 2 students that have exceptionalities, then only those 2 students will have access, not the other 30 students that are in your class. So I leave it always with this first one. But if you did have a secondary test that you wanted your exceptional students to have, then you might click off this one, but I always use the top one. And then you would add users to special access, and you can further refine their test. So you can change this specific to that one student. You can make the time limit longer, the grace period longer, whatever you want specific to those special access students. Okay. So we'll just save this down here because we have 10 minutes. And if we go back into our test here and we go into preview, what you're going to see in the top left-hand corner here is it's got the time limit. So you see it's now counting down. So once this time limit expires, it will turn red and it will say something like time has exceeded. Then the student cannot make any more changes. So even if I tried to click on the options, it's not going to allow me to be able to like that change is not going to be registered. So if I had done Lester Pearson and then time exceeded, like the grace period exceeded after 5 minutes, and I was like, oh no, it's actually Robert Borden, I could click this for all I want. It's not going to make a difference. It's not going to change it on my on the teacher's end. Like they're just going to see the Lester Pearson. So it's really important that they answer all the questions that they want to answer in the time that they have been allotted. What I've done is I've actually taken a test. I've taken our test here just to show you what are some options that you can do once students have actually taken the test. So if I come into here and I want to grade it, you're going to see that the attempts have been made. Okay. Now don't worry about this attempt in progress because that was us, just testing it out. So I can actually, if I click on this, I can actually reset it. But so that's in the event that a student submitted their test, you could just click on their attempt and then reset it and we'll delete their attempt. But we don't need to worry about that because we're happy with it. Now you'll see here that I've received a score of 2 out of 3. I purposely made one of the answers incorrect just so I can illustrate to you some of the options that you can do. So if I come in here into attempt 1, I can have a look at what questions they got wrong. So you can see there which question I got wrong. And additionally, you can even see how much time it took me to complete the test. So if you find that the students are exceeding your grace period or exceeding your time limit, you may want to increase for the next test the amount of time that you're allowing them to have. Okay. So if we come back to our test where we have your list of students, go to the little caret and you go to statistics. What you can see is the questions and averages of your students. So you can, like, I didn't know other students taking this test, so that's why you wouldn't see any other students' names here. But you would see all of your students and then what grade they got on that test. You can see the question stats. So if you have a look down here, you can see, okay, so all the students got question 1 right. All of them got question 2 right, but all of them got question 3 wrong. So this would, give you a little bit of a heads up that, oh, maybe I should look at question 3. Maybe I made a mistake. And so then you can make that correction if necessary. You can also look at the question details. So if you notice that, okay, question 3, a lot of people got wrong, you can come back here and see, okay, what are people picking? So let's say if everyone picked Robert Borden, but I had put the correct answer as being Mackenzie King, and obviously this is not the correct answer, but let's say I inadvertently when building the test, I accidentally made Mackenzie King as the correct answer, then I might say, oh, okay, now I see, where the problem lies, that actually they believe this was the correct answer. You could also see the differences between, like let's say 10% of the class did Robert Borden, 5% of the class did Lester Pearson, and 50% of the class did Mackenzie King. You can actually see where there's some discrepancy within the class as to the questions that they answered. Okay, so it gives you a little bit of detail on that. Now, if we go back to edit here, now once you've evaluated your tests, you can export it to your grades. I go through the grade system in my other video, and I'll put it up here in the title cards, but you can automatically export it to a particular grade item and then create a grade item. I'm not going to do that at this moment in time, but that's something that you can do. You can also create a submission view. So let's go over here and I'll show you what that is. The default is that they can't see the questions and they can't see the statistics. So what do they see on their end? So let me show you what it looks like from the student view. So if I'm a student, I'm going to go to the quizzes. Now they could go to grades and seating grades as well, but I'm going to show you in quizzes here. So I'm going to go to quizzes and it's going to say, oh, we got a result back. So I'm going to go to on attempt and it's going to say you got 2 out of 3, which is 66.6%. Now, if I click on attempt 1, it's going to tell me no details about that test. So I know nothing about which question I got wrong, what was the correct answer, and nothing like that. It just tells me I got 2 out of 3. So I'll show you what you can do to show the students what question they got incorrect. So in your test, you're going to go to edit, then you're going to go to submission views, and you're going to add an additional view. Now, this is where you can kind of play around with it. I just give it whatever name that I want. It makes no difference. I don't even think the students can see the name of the submission. What I play around with is what's down here. So show questions. So I would click off yes, and then you can decide how you want to refine it. So typically what I've done is I show all questions with user responses, and I show question answers. Now you can do just show questions answered incorrectly. And that will further limit what the student sees. So let me show you what it looks like if we do show all questions with user responses, and then I'll refine it to being show questions answered incorrectly. So here I am in the quizzes again. I'm going to click on attempt 1, and it opens up the test. And as you can see here, all of the questions are shown, the questions I got correct and the questions I got incorrect. So let's say, okay, I'm done showing the students their answers, and I want to get rid of this. All you need to do is click here so the check mark pops up, then trash it. And now the student won't be able to see those responses anymore. So you can kind of manage the time frame that they're able to see it and see their questions. So let's do another view here, and we're gonna create it a little bit differently. So we want yes, but this time we only want to show the questions they answered incorrectly, and we're going to show the question answers. So here I am on the student side. I'm going to click attempt again. And so notice it only shows me the one question that I got incorrect. So you can play around with it so however you want to further refine so that they can kind of see where they went wrong and how they could improve. Just always remember that you're going to make sure that once you finish showing the students the correct answers, you just want to make sure that you come back to submission views and you delete that submission. And once you've done that, it will go back to the default, which is that they can see nothing but their grade. Okay, so I would recommend that you make sure that you delete your additional views once you're finished with that. Now, one thing that you can do in creating your test is you can actually put correct answers in there so that when you're taking up the test, you can actually see the answer that you were looking for. Maybe key terms or whatever that you might be looking for, and those students can actually see them. So let me create a short answer question, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so here's a question that I've created. If you come here to options and then go to add feedback, you can put in the correct answer. You can put in suggestions, you can put in hints, whatever you want to do. So let's say I'm going to put in a suggestion here. Okay, and so I'm going to click save on that. When I go to take the test, so if I'm the student taking the test, they don't see that feedback. So let's say I, put in an answer. This is my answer. Okay, and I submit my quiz. So if I'm coming in here to grade my test, it automatically gives it a 0, but it's not published to the student. So the student doesn't see that they've received a 0 or anything like that. But let's say, okay, I'm reading this and I'm like, I can't remember, who the famous 5 or whatever. I can have a little bit of feedback here for myself. Oh, that's right. That's what the answer to that question is. And then I might say, okay, you get a 1 out of 2. Obviously, this is not worth a 1, but we'll just pretend here. And so it shows the feedback that I can see. And if I want to add in more information, I can add in more information. So if you're giving them the submission view, they'll be able to actually see your feedback if you write it in this box here. The final tip that I'm going to show you is to see which students have entered various parts of the test. So as you can see here, I've actually divided my tests up into the categories. This allows me to enter them independently into my mark book. So in my board and in my province, we're meant to identify what are knowledge marks, what are application marks, what are thinking marks. So once the students have completed a knowledge portion, that's evaluated, and then I can just take that, let's say it's 10 out of 10, I can just take that 10 out of 10, put it into my grade book, and it's separate from the application, as opposed to having them all together in one test. And then I have to say, okay, they did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I count up how many were in the knowledge section and count up how many were in the application section. It just takes away that element by having them as separate tests. So you'll see that I have 3 tests for 1 unit. They were all on the same day, as you can see, and you can even see the staggered time frames that I had here, like I mentioned earlier in this video. When I'm, if I want the students to enter the knowledge portion first, and how do I know who's entered the knowledge portion. The way to do that is just to go to your grades, and as long as I believe it's as long as it's associated with your grade book, which is what you would set up in going into if you go into your edit portion, and then you go to assessment and you create your your grade item. So you can see here I've added a grade item. As long as you've done that, what should happen is once you go into grades, and I'll show you what that looks like, you'll see your student list on the left-hand corner, on left-hand side, but you'll also see little red dots along the test. So seeing those little red dots indicates to you that the student has entered the test. So if anyone doesn't have a little red dot next to it, then you can say, you haven't entered the test. Student, you haven't entered this test. Why haven't you entered the test? And this just kind of allows you to manage who is still outstanding and who hasn't entered into that test.
Thank you so much for watching, and I hope it was helpful for you. Feel free to subscribe to me on my various social medias. I'll put them up here on the side. If you want, feel free to subscribe to me here at YouTube. When I upload new videos, you'll be able to see those new videos as soon as they come out. Again, thank you so much for your support, and I wish you all the best of luck with your distance learning as you move forward. Bye.